A sudden rumble came from the floor beneath the Special Forces soldier's feet. The soldier quickly sprayed gunfire at it, but more and more monsters emerged from underground, tearing through walls and charging toward the crowd, turning the military zone into a purgatory in the blink of an eye. What's even more terrifying is that the entire town is in crisis. Gaps to another dimension have appeared everywhere on the ground. Monsters are popping up like bamboo shoots after rain, targeting a group of children aged 7 to 10, dragging them into their lairs one after another. A figure slowly emerges from behind the blood-red portal. This test subject 001 is the leader of all the monsters. After so many years, the town of Hawkins is once again caught in a terrifying vortex. It instantly takes us back to November 1983, the winter when the Stranger Things series first began. The young will hid in a treehouse in the Upside Down, constantly singing to cheer himself up. But the monster appeared soon after. Will fired a shot, took the opportunity to run out of the hut, and climbed up a tall tree trunk in one go. He never expected the monster to catch up so quickly. In desperation, Will jumped toward the tree on the opposite side, but he missed his step. Luckily, the strap of his backpack caught on the tree trunk, cushioning his fall, and he didn't die. But the unconscious Will was still dragged back to the monster's lair. The ultimate villain Vecna slowly appeared. He was the first test subject at Hawkins' lab, designated 001. He had been banished to the Upside Down during his confrontation with 11. At this point, Vecna pointed his tentacles at Will and injected something unknown into the little boy's body.
You and I, we are going to do such beautiful things together, William.
Now 4 years have passed. Why has the monster returned to the town of Hawkins to kidnap children again? November 3rd, 1987. 18 months have passed since the events of the previous season. The main group is no longer split up on separate missions. Instead, everyone has gone back to the town of Hawkins. At this point, Hawkins had been designated a military quarantine zone by the government. Due to the continuous expansion of the rift to the Upside Down, the government was closely monitoring all activities in the town. Vecna, the one who caused the disaster last season, disappeared after the war, yet the dark threat he left behind hadn't faded. Instead, a bigger conspiracy was brewing in the shadows, so Hopper repeatedly reminded Mike, Will, Dustin, and Lucas to keep a low profile at school as much as possible, follow the rules, and fit in with the group. Stay focused for the next stealth mission. They must close the portal to the Upside Down and start the final battle against Vecna. Meanwhile, 11, who was still listed as missing, had become a top target for military manhunt. After regaining her superpowers, a large group of soldiers was chasing her right now. 11 was surrounded by the military and shot with a tranquilizer dart in the back. But when the soldiers approached, they realized it was a decoy. The real 11 was undergoing special training with Hopper and Joyce, trying to regain control of her powers to face the upcoming crisis. 11 knew how powerful Vecna was, so she didn't dare to slack off for a moment. On the other side, the Stranger Things teens discovered that the radio signal had been cut off by the military. To restore communication, they gathered near the long-range transceiver, but to fix the signal, they had to climb to the very top of the signal tower. Steve and Jonathan, the only two males, stepped forward. Naturally, the reason they were competing with each other was to catch Nancy's attention. Robin was quite annoyed by this male competition. The two scrambled to climb up, turned the long-range transceiver back on, and couldn't wait to take credit with their crush. But Nancy and Robin had already left. It turns out that a grocery truck that was supposed to arrive tomorrow showed up a few minutes earlier. Nancy and Robin went to check and found that Private Detective Murray snuck in disguised as a delivery man, bringing them a large batch of equipment, telemetry tags, bullets, and artillery shells. In addition, there was a plan for the second stealth mission. Maybe tonight they could find Vecna and put an end to Hawkins' nightmare once and for all. Lunchtime came soon, and the school radio returned to normal. Using her position as a radio host, Robin quietly sent out the signal for tonight's operation. Hopper and Mike, who were in different places, listened intently to catch the key words in Robin's speech, taking down the time and location of the operation. After the broadcast, the teen group met at the back of the studio. The younger group and the older group also headed to their respective secret bases to discuss. Assuming Murray's intelligence was correct, the supply convoy was expected to arrive in Hawkins at exactly 10 o'clock. This meant Hopper needed to enter the tunnel and head to the military-controlled area before 9 o'clock. Mike, Lucas, and the others would keep watch at their usual observation post. The convoy was expected to reach the military-controlled area at 10:15. At this point, use fire as a distraction to help Hopper enter the Upside Down. He'd better maintain a steady speed of 48 kilometers per hour. That way, Dustin and Steve could keep up with Hopper in the normal world. The two of them needed to keep the telemetry signal between -60 and -70 decibels, and follow the supply convoy, first from Main Street to Cornwallis Road. If there were no military or police around, they could run all red lights to increase speed. Going north along Cornwallis Road for about 10 kilometers would lead them to the designated Shell gas station. At this point, immediately notify Hopper to get out of the vehicle via radio. This way, Hopper would stop at the border of Zone G1. He would have a full 2 hours to find Vecna. In short, this stealth plan was flawless, but Robin couldn't help but point out that Zone G1 really didn't seem like a place Vecna would go. There was only one Circuit City and a few scattered supermarkets there. It wasn't like Vecna was going to Zone G1 to buy toilet paper, but Nancy's meaning was clear. Every zone must be searched in order and systematically. Steve chimed in, suggesting that Vecna might already be dead. After all, they had carried out more than 30 stealth missions since the war, and hadn't found any trace of monsters. Besides, hadn't gotten goosebumps or sensed danger since the big earthquake. Upon hearing this, Jonathan reminded Steve not to forget the prophecy Vecna showed Nancy, Hawkins being engulfed in flames, Karen and Holly all dead, so even the slightest possibility couldn't be ignored, unless they could be completely sure that Vecna was truly dead. As soon as he finished speaking, Will suddenly froze in place. He felt the sky spinning violently. A terrible premonition seeped deep into his bones. The next second, the school bell rang in the distance. Mike told Will not to panic, and to meet at static radio at 6 o'clock. At the same time, Nancy's younger sister Holly was trapped on a swivel chair by her friends. She lay on it, feeling dizzy and disoriented. It's exactly the same perspective Will had just now. Holly managed to stand up but ignored the school bell, and walked straight towards a figure. The teacher was confused and followed her, only to find Holly talking to thin air. Shortly after, Mike came to the school to pick her up, but he learned that Holly had been detained again. In fact, Mike knew his sister had an imaginary friend.
He's only trying to help. He says that there are monsters in Hawkins.
Mike comforted Holly. Whenever I feel scared or nervous, I also imagine Warrior Mike is right beside me. Maybe next time you're afraid, you won't need that mysterious gentleman anymore. You just need to imagine yourself as Hero Holly. As he spoke, Mike handed a small statue to his sister as an amulet. Meanwhile, Will and Lucas went to visit Max. She had been in a coma ever since being severely injured by Vecna. Everyone had never given up the hope of waking Max up. Hopper was preparing for the 37th stealth mission. Although 11 was eager to go into the tunnel with him, Hopper disagreed. He thought 11 didn't need to risk herself on a reconnaissance mission. The trump card should be saved for the end. Time quickly arrives at the agreed meeting time, but Dustin got into trouble with the school bullies, and was surrounded and beaten up. Even 11 had arrived at the meeting spot. Dustin still hadn't shown up. There's no time to waste, so everyone had to leave him behind and act first. But Steve couldn't drive and monitor the signal at the same time. Upon hearing this, Will volunteered to take Dustin's place, but Joyce refused without hesitation. In the end, Jonathan was chosen to replace Dustin. As the convoy departed, Hopper also got into the tunnel and snuck into the military area as planned. Mike and Lucas kept a close eye on the ground from above. The people inside the military area were about to start burning the portal. The two immediately sent out the signal. After receiving it, Hopper quickly got into the supply convoy and slipped into the portal while the soldiers' attention was diverted. He successfully arrived in the Upside Down. Jonathan listened carefully to the radio. As soon as he detected Hopper's presence, he ordered Steve to drive. Vehicles in both worlds moved forward at the same time, but no one expected the vehicle Hopper was hiding in to be hit. The soldier driving suddenly stopped. Luckily, Jonathan didn't lose the signal. They could still contact Hopper. But what's happening in the Upside Down? Why did the soldier stop? Will seemed to sense something, and froze instantly. A layer of dense goosebumps crept up his skin. A familiar roar came through the radio. The monster had appeared. Hopper looked at the distant street. A mind flayer killed all the soldiers behind, and jumped onto the truck on all fours. It instantly tore through the roof of the driver's seat, and killed the driver. The truck then crashed into a tree out of control. Will even blacked out and fainted. In his muddled consciousness, his perspective overlapped with the monsters. He realized the monster was heading straight for Holly's house. Upon hearing this, Nancy quickly took 11 to save her sister. At this point, the lights in Holly's room flickered frantically. A corner of the ceiling collapsed. The mind flayer poked its head out of the upside down. The mind flayer grabbed Holly's ankle and dragged her toward the ceiling, but the girl clung tightly to the bed frame and refused to let go. So the mind flayer only managed to yank off her shoe. Holly took the chance to run out of the bedroom and rushed into the bathroom, following the sound of music. She was so scared that she couldn't speak coherently. She kept telling her mom, "There's a monster in my room." Karen thought it was just her daughter's imagination acting up again. She comforted Holly, telling her not to be afraid and that it wasn't real. But as soon as she finished speaking, she felt blood on the back of her daughter's head. The bathroom lights flickered immediately afterward. The mind flayer's roar was right beside them. The next second, the monster broke through the door. But Karen and her daughter had vanished without a trace. The mind flayer smashed open the wardrobe with one palm, and searched everywhere in the narrow bathroom. Karen and Holly hid in the bathtub, holding their breath as their hearts raced. Just as the mind flayer was about to reach into the water, luckily, Holly's dad arrived just in time. The mind flayer was drawn by the noise outside, and turned to leave. Karen and Holly finally climbed out to catch their breath, but Holly's dad came face to face with the mind flayer. Shocked, he swung his golf club and smashed it hard at the monster. Karen grabbed her daughter and ran for their lives, but her clothes were soaked with water, and she slipped on the floor. Now they had nowhere left to run. Karen grabbed a wine bottle and smashed it.
Stay away from my daughter!
The brave Karen kept smashing the monster with the broken bottle, but there was a huge gap in strength between them. The mind flayer clenched its palm into a sharp point, and stabbed at Karen, then slapped her to the ground with one blow. Then it kidnapped the young Holly. When Nancy and 11 arrived at the scene, they only saw Karen lying in a pool of blood. She struggled to speak weakly and told Nancy, "Hurry, save your sister." Luckily, the rift to the upside down hadn't fully closed yet. 11 quickly crawled through to find Holly. Nancy rushed to take their mother to the hospital. She scrubbed the blood off her hands frantically, regretting her choices over and over again. They should have acted earlier, should have warned everyone sooner. That Vecna hadn't completely disappeared. Mike comforted Nancy, "We couldn't have foreseen this. Who would have guessed the monster would take Holly, who had nothing to do with it?" After hearing this, Nancy felt even more guilty, because Vecna had shown her a prophecy. In the prophecy, Holly, Dad, and Mom all died, but she hadn't taken it seriously. Now Vecna is back. He wants to take revenge on us, until he drains the last bit of pain from us. Lucas, who was beside her, quickly told Nancy to calm down. If Vecna's sneak attack this time was really to make you suffer, why did he leave your parents alive? Why did he take Holly to the upside down, instead of leaving her body here for you to see? The strangest thing is that Vecna didn't come in person either. He only sent a low-level mind flayer. And don't you think all this feels familiar? It's exactly the same as when Will was kidnapped back then. Today is November 3rd. Will was kidnapped on November 6th.
3 days away from the day that changed everything. I don't know about you guys, but I don't believe in coincidences.
The only comforting thing now is that 11 has entered the upside down. If anyone can save Holly, it must be 11. Upon hearing this, Mike couldn't help but recall the conversation he had with Holly after school. Holly said her imaginary friend Mr. Wazit told her, "There are monsters in Hawkins." He also warned her that these monsters are coming to kidnap children. No one expected that Holly would actually be kidnapped by the mind flayer that night. Could this really be just a coincidence? What if Mr. Wazit isn't a character Holly made up with her imagination, but actually exists? He must know why Holly was kidnapped, and where she was taken. But the question is, how to find Mr. Wazit. At the same time, the police arrived at the crime scene. Although Nancy said she was the only witness, the black police officer found the slime left behind. When the rift closed, he guessed that 11 must have been there. So he ordered his men to retrieve all video surveillance footage. Within a 3.2 kilometer radius of the house, in the upside down. 11 was searching everywhere for traces of Holly. Suddenly, footsteps were heard ahead. She quickly dodged behind a tree trunk, gathered her strength, and unleashed a powerful attack forward. But the one hit was actually Hopper. After confirming that he was unharmed, 11 picked up a flashlight and walked towards a stump on the side. There was residual blood from the mind flayer on it. Karen must have stabbed it with the wine bottle. If they followed the blood trail, they might be able to find Holly. When Hopper learned that 11 had rushed to the crime scene by car, he immediately got angry. "What if you were caught on camera by nearby surveillance?" 11 explained. "Don't worry, I was wearing a hoodie." Hopper got even angrier after hearing that. A hoodie isn't an invisibility cloak. If 11 was discovered by the military, there would be big trouble. Ignoring Hopper's nagging, 11 quickened her pace along the blood trail, but as it turned out, Hopper was right. Dr. Kai from the military area had already found 11's trace through surveillance. On the other side, Joyce was talking to Will. From their conversation, it could be learned that Will's connection with the monster had become even closer. He must have reconnected to the monster's collective consciousness in some way. But getting into the illusion was like a dream. Will wasn't sure why the mind flayer kidnapped Holly either. The only thing certain was that Vecna was getting closer and closer to them. Robin, who was eavesdropping nearby, couldn't help but chime in. Maybe Will was like a human receiver. It was like he had an antenna on his head, and Vecna used the mind flayer particles as radio waves. So when the antenna was close enough to the radio waves, the signal was particularly clear. But if it was too far away, there would be interference. Upon hearing this, Will said, "Then can't we use the strength of the signal to find Holly?" Not long ago, he had a vision in the woods near the school. At that time, Will didn't understand what it meant. Now he realized that he must have shared the monster's perspective. If Will went back to those woods, he might be able to reconnect to the collective consciousness and find Holly. But Joyce refused to let her son take the risk, no matter what, because they had used Will to monitor Vecna before. But it almost cost Will his life. Meanwhile, Jonathan and the other person who were repairing the broken car finally saw Dustin, who was covered in blood from a head injury. They also learned that he had been beaten up by the bad kids at school. Steve told him regretfully, "You missed the most informative stealth mission ever." To sum it up in one sentence, the monster has appeared again and kidnapped Holly for no reason. To make matters worse, we've lost contact with the upside down. At this point, Joyce was constantly trying to communicate with Hopper. Seeing her wasting time here, Robin simply told a lie. She said, "The capacitor is broken. Will and I are going to fix it." In reality, she pulled him towards the woods, planning to try that method of locating Holly using the signal. But as soon as the two left, the radio picked up a faint signal. Joyce quickly asked if it was Hopper. Dustin listened carefully for a while and realized it was at most a bit of electromagnetic interference. Because Hopper's telemetry tag didn't show up on the decoder, Joyce couldn't help but press. Could the receiver be connected to the capacitor in any way? Because Robin just said the capacitor was broken, she and Will were trying to fix it. "I want to make sure this isn't affecting the signal connection." Jonathan and Dustin exchanged a glance, and immediately realized Robin had lied to Joyce. At this point, Robin and Will had arrived at the woods outside the school. They went back to the spot where the vision appeared. But Will didn't feel anything. The two planned to search around the woods. Robin accidentally found an outdoor assignment, left by 5th graders in the open space ahead. It was a circle made of colorful stones. Will stared at the pattern under his feet. His field of vision slowly returned to this morning. He also heard the children's laughter and chatter. Maybe they were getting closer and closer to the monster's lair. On the other side, 11 noticed that Hopper was moving slower and slower, and he kept holding his side. She ran over, lifted his clothes, and found a wound inflicted by the monster. 11 quickly stopped to help Hopper treat the wound. Unexpectedly, as soon as the bandaging was done, they heard the mind flayers roar ahead. Hopper immediately stepped in front of 11 to protect her. The two set off cautiously. After walking about 10 meters, a wall of flesh appeared ahead. Holly's boot was lying on the ground not far away.
Maybe that's why I can't find her in my mind. I took her through the wall.
On the other side, Mike and Nancy planned to talk to their mom, to find Holly's mysterious friend Mr. Wazit, but the doctor said Karen was recovering from surgery. Her body systems hadn't fully bounced back yet. In addition, her throat was severely damaged. Even if she woke up, she wouldn't be able to speak to you. Nancy didn't give up because of this. She took Mike into the elevator, and pressed the button for the janitorial floor.
I don't trust doctors who smoke. Or call me sweetheart.
When the elevator doors opened, the siblings changed their outfits, unexpectedly. Before they could get close to their mom's ward, they ran into the doctor they met earlier. Nancy told Mike to quickly pretend to be lame, then she supported him and walked past the doctor. The two successfully found their unconscious mom. Karen opened her eyes when she heard Nancy's voice. The siblings quickly handed her a pen. They asked Karen if she knew about Holly's imaginary friend Mr. Wazit. Upon hearing this, Karen wrote down what the teacher told her. At noon, Holly had talked to Thin Air and insisted she saw Mr. Wazit. According to Holly's description, this man wore a pocket watch, was very tall, and had on a vest. He looked very gentle and kind. Moreover, Mr. Wazit had another name. Just as Mrs. Karen was recalling that name, Will took Robin to the amusement area of Holly's school and found that children's carousel. Will explained, in the vision I had earlier, the sky was spinning.
I don't understand. I thought you were seeing through the eyes of the Demogorgon.
But you said yourself Vecna controls the hive mind, so when he searches for his victims,
He invades their minds.
he sees what they see.
As soon as he finished speaking, Karen made the last stroke of her writing. A name jumped out on the paper, Henry Creel. That is Vecna's real name. The first test subject designated 001. Holly was actually kidnapped by the ultimate boss. After dawn, the two hurried out of the woods. On the way, they ran into Joyce, who was searching everywhere for them, ignoring his mom's anger. Will straight up said that Holly was just the beginning. From the visions he had seen, Vecna would kidnap more children. Although Will still didn't understand the other person's purpose, he could sense Vecna's next target in advance. Indiana, the quiet kindergarten. Vecna had already set his sights on the next child. As for Holly, she was trapped in the perfect illusion he created, mistakenly believing that Vecna rescued her from the monster's clutches. Moreover, this gentle older brother told Holly, once your parents recover from their injuries, I will bring them here too. Only by hiding here can you stay away from the monsters. After the two happily finished breakfast, Vecna told Holly, I'm going to save other children. Promise me you'll wait quietly in the house. No matter what, don't go near the woods.
Oh, and if you don't mind, bring my mail in, won't you?
Holly opened the mailbox and saw her favorite record and a tape player inside. The little girl was overjoyed and didn't realize it was a trap all. At the same time, Hopper and 11 tried to break through that wall of flesh, but the wall was almost alive. They finally tore open a crack, but it healed the next second. The two were about to replenish their strength, but the military showed up halfway to cause trouble. Their vehicle was equipped with a special device that could interfere with 11's superpowers. Luckily, Hopper reacted quickly and took 11 to hide in a secluded spot. The soldiers in the car didn't find anyone, so they simply stood in front of the wall to relieve themselves. He was about to pull up his pants and leave, when he noticed a dagger stuck in the wall of flesh. That meant there must be someone nearby. The soldier hurried back to the car and scanned the surroundings with that strange device. 11, hit by the scan, was in great pain and couldn't help letting out a whimper. Upon hearing this, the soldier approached the sound source cautiously. In the nick of time, Hopper fired first, but he quickly ran out of ammunition and had to pounce to protect 11. After the shooting outside stopped, Hopper reloaded his gun and pulled out 2 hand grenades. He held his breath and waited for the right moment. Once the soldier's footsteps drew near, Hopper threw the 2 hand grenades. After the huge explosion, he smashed open a wooden plank, aimed at the equipment on the car, and fired wildly to blow it up. As soon as the force suppressing 11 disappeared, she walked out of the bunker. With 2 casual waves of her hands, she wiped out all the enemies. On the other side, the members in the real world gathered. Will pointed out that Vecna's next target is Derek, the youngest son of the Turnbow real estate family, because this morning, he entered the perspective of a little boy who kept provoking and bullying his classmates. The bullied child shouted, "Get lost, Derek."
Were you seeing through the eyes of Vecna or of Derek?
I was Vecna, but inside Derek's mind.
Simply put, Vecna can infiltrate the victims' minds, so Will can follow him into the victims' perspectives. He used this trick on Chrissy and Max before, but his approach is slightly different this time. Vecna didn't appear as a monster. Instead, he deceived Holly in the form of Henry. This suggests he wants to build a friendship with the kidnapped children. Although no one knows Vecna's true motives, the most crucial task right now is to protect Derek. The main group plans to stake out across the street from Derek's house. After the boy's family falls asleep, they will quietly sneak Derek out and hide him in a completely isolated abandoned farm. But during this process, Derek mustn't see them, nor should he know where he is, otherwise, Vecna will find his hiding place through Derek's mind. In short, this plan is to save a child by kidnapping him, but kidnapping someone else's child from their home is probably not an easy task. Even if by some miracle this plan works, Holly is still missing, and Hopper and 11 are still unaccounted for. This won't help them find Vecna's lair. It will only buy Derek a little more time. After thinking long and hard, Mike came up with a way to both save Derek and find Holly. First, they need to recruit someone trusted by Derek's family. Let this person help sedate them. This way, they can easily kidnap Derek, and if Vecna enters his mind during this time, he will only think Derek is asleep. Then he will send a mind flayer to capture him, but by the time the mind flayer arrives, Derek will have already been moved. Instead, Mike can take the opportunity to set a trap, find a way to plant a signal tracker on the mind flayer, follow the monster to track down the location of their leader Vecna. It has to be said that this plan is quite feasible. Mike and Lucas immediately went to find Erica, because this girl is good friends with Derek's older sister Tina. She can find a legitimate reason to get into their house. But the problem is that Erica had a fight with Tina not long ago, so she had to apologize first to mend their friendship. On the other side, Robin and Will were in charge of getting sedatives. The two went to Hawkins Memorial Hospital to visit Grandma Messi, who fractured her bone after falling down the stairs. The old lady has a large supply of sedative medications, enough to knock out a cow. Moreover, the nurse taking care of Grandma Messi is lazy. The medicine cabinet is never locked. The two sneaked into the ward and filled a big bag with medicine. Nancy, Jonathan, and the others contacted Murray to buy some raw materials from him to set the trap, such as various sizes of animal trapwire, shotgun shells, and other miscellaneous items. Nancy planned to insert the telemetry tracker into the shotgun ammunition, but Murray pointed out that if the gunpowder explodes and the resulting heat doesn't destroy the transmitter, the recoil will still damage it. But this is just a theory. Nancy planned to test it with an experiment. After assembling it, she fired a shot at a sack. Unexpectedly, the transmitter remained intact. Jonathan looked at Nancy, who was fully focused on saving people. He touched the engagement ring he had long prepared. For a moment, he didn't know if he should speak up. At the same time, Holly was living a carefree life in the illusion created by Vecna. She could mess around in the huge house and enjoy chocolate cake to her heart's content, and there were endless beautiful dresses to wear. Holly also found traces of Uncle Henry in the big house. He must have been in the Boy Scouts when he was a child, because Holly found a summer camp badge. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Holly nervously asked, "Is that you, Henry?" But there was no response from outside. She summoned up her courage to check, and found that the mailbox indicated there was mail. Holly found a letter and a compass inside. The letter read, "I need your help. Meet me at the place marked with an X." The signature was Henry's name. When she unfolded the letter, there was a hand-drawn map inside. As long as she followed the route marked on it, she could find the place with the X. On the other side, all the military personnel had gotten into the Upside Down to search for 11 on a large scale. Nearly every vehicle was equipped with suppression devices, so 11 mustn't be caught by them. Hopper captured the man who was urinating against the wall, and temporarily tied him up inside the carriage. After all, they had no idea how to get through the wall right now. Hopper planned to wait for the next supply convoy, and escape the Upside Down with them. Once they were out, he would discuss a plan with everyone, but 11 thought it was better to stay and find a way. After all, the people outside didn't know how to get through the wall either. Just discussing it wouldn't lead to a solution. Besides, this soldier actually had the guts to urinate on the wall. He might know something we didn't. 11 could infiltrate the soldier's mind to interrogate him. Hopper reminds her not to forget that these soldiers were trained to resist interrogation. Sometimes it could take up to 2 weeks to force them to talk.
With my help, it will. I can break it. 20 minutes.
As soon as he finished speaking, the tied-up man woke up. As soon as he saw Hopper, he claimed, "I'm just a regular infantryman. I don't know anything. If you don't believe me, you can kill me right now." Hopper had spent most of his life in the military, and could tell at a glance that the man was from a special forces unit, the kind of guy who cuts off enemies' ears from their corpses, and makes them into necklaces. That's why he's here chasing after a little girl.
Little girl. She's a freak! She took down a helicopter just by looking at it. I had friends in that Huey, man.
No wonder he hates 11 so much. There's actually a blood feud between them. While Hopper was distracting the soldier with conversation, 11 had already infiltrated his mind. She could see everything he had thought, and everything he had seen, and quickly identified a key figure, Dr. Kai. 11 saw that there was also a military base in the Upside Down, near Gable Ridge Road. She followed Dr. Kai's footsteps, and found a mysterious door at the end of the base, but the soldiers struggled desperately, refusing to let 11 see more. His head throbbed with pain as he tried to clear his mind, but 11 was forcing her way in.
Just get her out of my head! Get her out of my head!
Hopper rushed to 11's side, worried that she might be affected if the soldier fell unconscious. Luckily, 11 was fine and heard sounds coming from behind that door. She guessed that Dr. Kai was holding someone inside. That person most likely had superpowers too. 11 had a bold guess. The military might have captured Vecna and locked him behind that security door. At the same time, Holly was torn about whether to follow the instructions in the letter, because Henry had told her never to go into that woods. But the route in the letter clearly required passing through the woods. This contradiction suggested that the letter might be a forgery. But what if Henry really needed her help? In the end, Holly picked up a fire poker, put on her Boy Scout backpack, and resolutely set off. As night fell, Tina went to call Derek downstairs for dinner, but this messy brother only cared about playing video games. She simply turned off the power, grabbed the game disc, and rushed downstairs. The two chased each other around the living room until their mother stopped them. Then the doorbell rang. Tina went to answer the door and found Erica in tears, holding her favorite pie to apologize. Tina immediately forgave her good friend and invited her inside. Joyce wondered how long it would take for the medication to work. Robin explained that it depended on how much pie they ate, and how quickly they ate it. Even what time they had lunch and what they ate, caffeine and alcohol intake, would also affect how the medication worked. In short, this plan was full of variables. Erica was currently using a napkin to pretend to eat, but the problem was that Tina refused to eat the fruit pie, because she was trying to lose weight. But Derek's dad was already slurring his words. Erica quickly told Tina, "I used low-fat milk powder specifically for you."
Why do you care so much if I eat your stupid pie?
Because it's for you.
Oh my god. It's because you want me fat, isn't it?
Just as the two were about to argue over the pie again, Derek's dad suddenly stood up, dizzy and lightheaded. He explained he wasn't feeling well, and wanted to go back to his room to rest, but he collapsed to the ground before reaching the bedroom. The heartless Derek laughed loudly when he saw this. Mom rushed over to check on him, but she fainted the next second too. Derek followed, still laughing. Now only Tina, the troublemaker, was left.
And I told you to eat your damn pie.
After knocking out Derek's family, the others quickly drove over to set the trap. They drew the curtains and covered the heads of the 4 family members. Then they dragged Derek into the car, and Joyce took him to the abandoned farm. The rest moved the sofa to make space. They sawed a rectangle in the living room floor, and set up animal trap wire underneath. Finally, they covered the hole with a carpet. In addition, they prepared acetone balloons. There were also hidden mechanisms in the ceiling. Now they just had to wait for the mind flayer to appear. About 10 minutes later, the streetlights on Arlington Street started flickering. Soon after, the lights in the villa malfunctioned too. This meant the mind flayer had gotten into the house. It rushed straight into Derek's room, tore through the ceiling, and jumped down to the floor. The mind flayer pulled back the bulging quilt, but there was only a dummy underneath. Lucas took the chance to sneak attack from behind, throwing acetone-filled balloons at it. Annoyed, the mind flayer ran out of the room, but it triggered a mechanism, and was hit by a wooden plank covered in nails. Letting out a roar of pain, it jumped up to the second floor immediately. Lucas rushed to the living room, and leaped over the carpet in one stride, but the mind flayer stepped on the trap, and fell into the hole on the first floor, but it quickly struggled to climb out. Mike, who had anticipated this, swung an axe down. The mind flayer fell back to the first floor in embarrassment. Nancy, hiding behind the bar, took the opportunity to shoot, injecting the tracker into the mind flayer's body. Jonathan, standing nearby, threw a Molotov cocktail at it, because they needed to scare the mind flayer away, so it would flee back to its lair. The burning mind flayer lived up to expectations, tearing open a rift and getting into the Upside Down. After receiving Mike's signal, Dustin immediately started tracking the mind flayer's location. Nancy and Jonathan also got in the car, chasing the signal southeastward. Before long, Derek regained consciousness and secretly took off his hood. Robin quickly ran over to cover his eyes again. How could this chubby kid be awake already? He ate 2 huge pieces of fruit pie. Will as if sensing something, walked to the door and said bluntly that it no longer mattered if he was awake. "We're in the southeast. That's why the Mind Flayer is running this way. Vecna already knows where we are." At the same time, Holly was following the map. She walked through the woods and reached an open area. A tall rock wall stood ahead. There was a narrow crack in the middle of the wall. Holly called out for Henry repeatedly, but there was no response. The next second, a black figure flashed by. She immediately turned around and ran, hiding behind a large rock with the fire poker in hand. But that person chased after her quickly. Holly peeked out cautiously, and was shocked to find that it was Max. Holly remembered this older sister. She loved skateboarding and never took off her Walkman. But the problem was that Max was clearly in a coma at Hawkins Hospital. How could she be here? Before Max could answer, a terrifying noise came from the distance. "This place isn't safe." Max led Holly toward the stone cave. The little girl anxiously said, "I still need to save Henry. The letter said he's in trouble." Max stopped the chattering Holly and said, "Henry isn't in trouble, because I wrote that letter." Holly immediately grew suspicious. She suspected the Max in front of her was a monster in disguise. After all, the real one was still lying in the hospital. An exasperated Max explained, "Would a monster know that? Your brother originally wanted a bright orange mohawk. Only Mike's close friends would know such an embarrassing secret." Holly hesitated for a few seconds, then followed Max into the stone cave. After passing through the narrow entrance, a whole new world opened up inside. It was clear that Max had been living here for quite some time. The stone cave had almost everything one could need.
Where are we? In a memory. Exists inside a world of 1,000 memories.
Max said bluntly, "No matter how wonderful you think this place is, it's just a prison, a place Henry uses to hold us. In the real world." Joyce was comforting Derek.
Do you know who I am? An evil child kidnapper.
That was a fair point, Joyce explained patiently. "Do you remember, Will? The reason he was missing for so long is that he was kidnapped by a scary monster, and now that monster is coming for you, which is why we hid you here." To Joyce's surprise, Derek wasn't shocked at all. He even said, "Mr. Wazit already told me." Joyce said, "That Mr. Wazit is just the monster in disguise. Now I can untie you. Can you cooperate with us to hide from the monster?" Derek nodded, but as soon as the rope was untied, he knocked Joyce over and tried to run away. Luckily, Will reacted quickly, tackled the chubby kid to the ground, and pinned him down. Robin and Erica rushed to close the door. Derek grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it in Will's face. He climbed up the ladder to the top of the barn, refusing to listen to their explanations. Just then, Will touched the back of his neck. The next second, he shared the Mind Flayer's perspective. The wooden door of the barn banged loudly. Joyce grabbed an axe and stood at the forefront. She swung repeatedly at the monster, trying to protect the children. In the nick of time, Steve drove over and slammed into the monster. The Mind Flayer got up, ran to a distant wall, tore open a rift, and fled into the Upside Down. Staring at the bright red rift, Steve suddenly had a bold idea. What if the portal is like a peanut butter crunch ball, crunchy and hard on the outside, soft and creamy on the inside? Then we could drive right in and chase the Mind Flayer through the Upside Down. There was no time to waste. Steve floored the gas pedal and rushed toward the narrow rift. Luckily, his guess was correct. The four of them successfully entered the Upside Down. The signal here was stronger than ever before. The group chased the Mind Flayer toward Ron Mountain Cemetery. They were almost at the county border. The Mind Flayer didn't seem tired at all. It just kept accelerating. Dustin was about to lose its signal. Steve had to step on the gas and speed up even more. But something suddenly appeared ahead. He couldn't swerve in time and crashed into it. On the other side, Will's vision flickered back and forth, showing him many kidnapped children. After regaining consciousness, he used red paint to draw on the barn wall. In the end, he drew a set of strange patterns. He didn't know what they meant, but he could feel that they were important to Vecna, and Vecna didn't want him to see these images. Robin speculated that, because Will had come into close contact with the Mind Flayer, he must have infiltrated the center of the collective consciousness, allowing him to see these never-before-seen images. In the vision, Will saw Holly tied to a spire. She seemed to be part of the patterns. Will used black paint to mark the positions where the children were being held. If his vision was correct, 3 more children had been kidnapped, and the total number would eventually reach 12. What does Vecna want with them? Why is he specifically kidnapping children? These questions couldn't be answered quickly. For now, they could only find a way to stop Vecna from kidnapping more children. As Soon as he finished speaking, Mike and Lucas arrived in a hurry. On their way over, they saw the military loading a large group of children onto military buses. It seemed Vecna wasn't the only one after these children. At the same time, Dr. Kai was explaining to his subordinates, the night Holly was kidnapped, 11 was at their house. 24 hours later, 3 more children went missing. There are 73 children between the ages of 9 and 10 in Hawkins. If the pattern holds, our next target is among these children. It turned out Dr. Kai mistakenly believed 11 was the one kidnapping the children, so he wanted to use them to lure 11 out. The children were abruptly taken away from their parents by soldiers. Now they huddled nervously on the bus. The teacher could only comfort them. Don't worry, think of this as a field trip. At this point, the bus had entered the military-controlled area. After seeing this, Erica quickly reported to Mike and the others. The children were taken into the second military camp from the library. Upon hearing this, Joyce immediately marked the location. From the map, it could be seen that the northern tunnel of the military-controlled area was directly under these military camps. This was a stroke of luck amidst misfortune. At the very least, they could approach the children through the tunnel. But the military would definitely be heavily guarded. The best plan was to secretly dig upward from inside the tunnel, all the way into the military camp. After rescuing the children, they would hand them over to Murray, to secretly smuggle out of Hawkins, away from Vecna's sphere of influence. But stealing children right under the military's nose was almost an impossible task. Robin suddenly thought of a movie called The Great Escape. The plot was almost identical to their situation. Robin remembered that the movie's main character hid the dug tunnel in the bathroom. Maybe they could use this idea, but the question was, how to find the location of the bathroom, and how to figure out which specific children Vecna had targeted. Mike thought they needed an inside man, someone who could enter the military camp, to measure the distance to the bathroom, and find out which children had seen Mr. Wazit. Most importantly, someone who wouldn't arouse the military's suspicion. Upon hearing this, everyone looked at the chubby Derek. He was the only child not taken by the military. He wouldn't arouse any suspicion at all. After finalizing the plan, Derek grabbed his luggage and reported to the military zone himself. The soldiers quickly ushered him into the military camp.
This is Private Chet. Got any questions? Direct them to him.
Where might I relieve myself?
Derek successfully infiltrated the camp, while the others went to get supplies from Murray. They needed proper tools for digging the tunnel. Just then, Derek sent a message via pager. He said the last stall in the bathroom was 45 steps from the main entrance. He stuck a note on the stall door with his snot, which read out of order. Immediately after, Derek gathered the children and said, "I'm an envoy sent by Wazit. If any of you have seen him, tell me now. Then meet me in the bathroom when night falls. I'll lead you to a safe place." Most of the children thought the chubby kid was crazy, but those who had seen Henry approached him privately. On the other side, the digging team was ready to start. Mike stopped Will at the end of the team, and said he had an idea. Since Vecna could control the collective consciousness like a puppet master, could Will do the same? Mike believed anything was possible. Maybe Will could be the key to their victory. On the other side, in the Upside Down, Hopper and 11 let the Special Forces soldier go. They tracked him to the outside of the military zone. In the Upside Down, there were 2 infantrymen in the West Gate Tower. Many others were patrolling the East Tower and the ground. Sneaking in quietly to find Vecna was no easy task. 11 estimated the height of the fence, and planned to jump over it. But the military zone's roof was made of metal, and jumping on it would make a loud noise. Luckily, thunder rumbled constantly in the Upside Down. A loud clap of thunder sounded every 7 seconds. So as long as they timed their landing with the thunder, it would cover the sound of stepping on the metal. Before the two could act, Dustin's voice came over the pager. He briefly explained what had happened on the ground. He asked Hopper and 11 to meet at the Ron Cemetery Church, because Steve had crashed the car into a wall, and needed 11's superpowers to pull it out. Only then could they continue chasing the Mind Flayer. Upon hearing this, Hopper immediately realized Steve had crashed into that wall of flesh. But what was strange was that, when he and 11 saw the wall, it should have been about 400 meters southeast of Old Hagen Bridge, exactly the opposite direction of Ron Cemetery. Hopper told the group not to try breaking through anymore. You can't get past it. Stay there and wait. 11 and I will join you after we finish here. Hopper ended the communication after speaking. 11 covered her face, took the thunder as a signal, and rushed toward the fence like an arrow released from a bow. She leaped over The fence that was taller than a person landed on the roof in sync with the thunder. 11 immediately jumped to the West Gate Tower and took down the infantryman there. Then she opened the door to let Hopper in. At the same time, Steve and the others couldn't sit still. Although they couldn't break through the wall, they refused to believe the wall had no end. There must be a way to go around it. But Dustin quickly rejected this idea, because through the telemetry tracker, he found that the wall was a circle completely surrounding the Upside Down. But this also meant the center of the circle was extremely important. According to the map, the center point was Hawkins' laboratory. Maybe it was where the Upside Down was created. The group planned to go check it out. On the other side, from Max and Holly's conversation, after Max fell into a coma, her consciousness got into Hawkins' laboratory. There were many, many children who had died horribly there. She was shocked and rushed into the corridor, only to hear a school bell ringing from behind the door at the end. When Max opened the door, the scene changed to a school, but the timeline inside was 30 years ago. She even saw the young Joyce. Max picked up a theater performance list from the ground, noticed Henry's name was at the very bottom. She suddenly realized she was trapped in Henry's memories, or rather, his mind. Max wanted to escape this terrible place as soon as possible. She kept moving from one memory to another, but this place was like a maze. Max went in a big circle, and ended up back at the original laboratory. Just as she was despairing, she suddenly heard Kate Bush's song. Music always finds a way to guide people. Max knew it was Lucas playing Kate's song in the real world, so she followed the music to the night. She was almost killed by Vecna. The exit back to the real world was hidden there. Max saw her own self in the hospital, so close she could feel the warmth of Lucas's palm. But the tape suddenly snapped. The door disappeared along with the music. Instead, Vecna appeared again. Max ran for her life and ended up in this cave. Strangely, Vecna didn't dare to enter. His face was filled with fear. This cave must hold some terrible memories that even Vecna didn't dare to approach. That's why Max had been hiding here. It wasn't until Holly appeared that she had hope of escaping. But to make this happen, Max needed Holly to return to that house before Vecna came back. At the same time, Hopper and 11 were just about to break through the door. The Special Forces soldier returned to the military base. He alerted them, and the suppression device was activated. 11 immediately felt a splitting headache, and couldn't use her powers anymore. Although their operation here was hindered, the main digging team was making smooth progress. They successfully found the location of the bathroom. Derek saw the pager flashing. It was the signal that the digging team had arrived. He immediately signaled to the little girl Debbie to go to the bathroom first. The latter obeyed, and went to the outside of the first bathroom stall. A loud noise came from the floor. The next second, Lucas poked his head out. Everyone lifted Debbie into the tunnel. The next child would go to the bathroom, when the signal light flashed again. But as they climbed down holding the water pipe, they accidentally loosened it. Mike felt water on his face, poked his head out, and saw the pipe was about to burst. He and Will quickly climbed out to tighten it, but the water had already flooded into the dormitory. A little girl noticed something was wrong, and immediately went to report to the police officer. Mike realized the operation was exposed, and told Lucas to take the other children first. Derek saw the frantically flashing signal light, and simply told everyone to run together. He closed the door just before the officer came in. Mike and Will also went to help, buying time for the other children to escape. Robin first took 5 children to meet Murray, but the soldiers had already broken down the door, and captured Mike and the others. Joyce tried to argue that it was for the children's sake. Just as everyone was arguing, Will felt the Mind Flayer approaching again. The next second, the lights above flickered wildly. The floor banged loudly from impacts. A Mind Flayer suddenly rushed out, and killed several soldiers in an instant. The others opened fire on it, but more and more Mind Flayers appeared, and ordinary people were no match for them at all. At the same time, Robin, Murray near the signal tower, and Lucas and others still in the tunnel, all saw the red light from the Upside Down. Mind Flayers tore open rifts one after another and climbed out. Hawkins once again became a hellscape. Groups of soldiers were torn to pieces by the monsters. Mike instructed everyone to follow him, planning to rush into the radio hut and escape into the tunnel. This scene was thrilling to watch, and pushed the plot to its climax. Will, sharing the monster's sensations, kept roaring. Joyce quickly pulled him aside. Chaos also erupted in the Upside Down. After hearing the alarm, Dr. Kai immediately led people to capture 11, but he was ambushed by Hopper hiding in the shadows. He grabbed a reagent bottle and smashed it at the soldiers, held one of them and crashed into a nearby laboratory. Unluckily, there was a monster locked inside. Sensing danger, it immediately wrapped its tentacles around Hopper. Dr. Kai turned on the laboratory's cooling switch. The monster involuntarily tightened its tentacles. When exposed to the cold, 11 wanted to save Hopper but had no superpowers, but she had a backup plan. Grabbed a pair of scissors and stabbed at Dr. Kai. Hopper also took the opportunity to kick the cooling switch. He lunged forward, knocked the gun out of Dr. Kai's hand, twisted his arm backward, and snatched Dr. Kai's access card. Hopper smashed open the window and told 11 to run first, but he accidentally revealed the bomb strapped to his body. He comforted 11, "This is the last resort. If I can't escape, I'll take Vecna with me." After speaking, Hopper resolutely walked behind the door. 11 couldn't open the door, and could only watch Hopper take the risk. But a few minutes later, Hopper suddenly opened the door. 11 walked nervously into the innermost room. She found that the person locked inside wasn't Vecna, but her long-lost friend 008. Almost at the same time, Mike looked at the upside-down portal as a dark figure approached. Vecna tore through the barrier and stepped out. He raised his hand to block the flamethrower's fire, and instantly reflected it back at the soldiers. Vecna completely turned the place into a sea of fire. He controlled the mind flayers to speed up, and Murray was soon chased down by the monsters. Murray had to swerve constantly, trying to shake off the mind flayers, but the truck lost its balance and rolled over. Even Lucas and others in the tunnel were ambushed by monsters from both sides. The plot reached its most desperate moment. Vecna waved his hand, knocked Joyce away, and pulled Will to his side.
You know why? Why I chose them to reshape the world is because they are weak, easily broken, easily reshaped.
And Will was the most fragile and prone to breaking. Among these children, Vecna threw him to the ground like trash. All the past memories surged in Will's mind. Mike, his mom, Jonathan, these loved ones who grew up with him. Will was willing to protect them at all costs. A miracle finally happened. Will took control of all the mind flayers, and dominated the collective consciousness, kindling the flame of hope in Hawkins. When everything finally calmed down, Joyce hugged her son tightly in her arms. Mike even excitedly praised Will for being a powerful magician, but Will wore a look of deep worry, because Vecna had not only captured Derek and the others, but also taken away all the fleeing children. Now all 12 children were in his grasp. Will said dejectedly that it was all his fault for not stopping Vecna earlier. On the other side, Vecna took the children back to the upside down, and inserted a disgusting tube into each of their mouths. The next second, Derek and the other children appeared on the lawn, and Vecna appeared in the guise of Henry, and frantically brainwashed the children. He said that the monsters wanted to kidnap everyone, and it was all thanks to his timely intervention that they were saved. He also warmly invited everyone to come to his house, saying that it was very safe there, but he warned them to never go into the woods, for that was the territory of the monsters. While Vecna was fooling the children, Max was hiding not far away and watching secretly, but she didn't dare to step forward and stop him. When the children went inside and sat down, Henry said earnestly that Hawkins and the whole world were in danger, but luckily, he had a solution. The children were easy to fool and anxiously asked him how they could win the victory. Henry said that he had traveled far and wide, and accidentally discovered another world, a world full of kindness, with no monsters and no evil. Then he talked about why he had chosen Holly and the others, lying that they were the chosen ones, who could awaken a powerful force.
Channel our energy and draw this new world to ours.
Simply put, it's to make the children become heroes. Upon hearing this, Holly asked if any other children would come here. He gave a negative answer and said he would never leave again. He told the children to play to their heart's content, for they were going to save the world tomorrow. On the other side, Dr. K led his men to continue chasing 11. After breaking down the door, they were surprised to find that 11 wasn't there. Dr. K ordered his men to carefully check the ventilation ducts and other places, saying they must find her, even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground. When the soldiers left, Dr. K glanced at the test subject 008, wondering why its hand was moving. Realizing that 008 had been taken away by Hopper and 11, the tricked Dr. K flew into a rage. At the same time, Mike and the others found the injured Lucas. Joyce quickly bandaged his wound. Lucas apologized, saying he had failed to protect the children, but everyone knew that Lucas had been very brave and had done his best. On their way out, Mike talked about how cool Will had looked just now, praising him for having superpowers now too. Will said that wasn't the case at all. He had merely stolen Vecna's powers. He was just an ordinary person, but the bad thing now was that Vecna had taken all the children. He already had his vessels. Lucas didn't understand what vessels meant. Will said he didn't know either. Vecna called the children the vessels for reloading the world. Joyce asked her son if there was a way to take control of the collective consciousness again. Will replied that he couldn't, unless the collective was nearby. Joyce asked if there was a possibility that Will could get another chance to seize the power, using Vecna's own power to attack him, making him regret underestimating Will. Encouraged by his mother, Will's eyes instantly welled up with tears. Meanwhile, in the Upside Down, Hopper stopped the car inside that they had narrowly escaped again. 11 pressed him about the bomb, wanting to know why he always liked to act on his own. Hopper tried to make excuses, but 11 said she could feel that Hopper was determined to die, planning to kill Vecna by dying together with him. As the two were arguing, 008 suddenly spoke up, asking if 11's friends were in the church. After getting into the church, they found nothing but disgusting vines. There was no sign of Dustin and the others. Dustin and his group arrived at the laboratory in the Upside Down. They wanted to find a way to break through that fleshy wall, but they had no idea how to do it at all. In fact, they didn't have a clue, so they had to take things one step at a time. Considering how big the laboratory was, Nancy thought they should split up into pairs. This way, they could search much faster. Steve agreed with her suggestion, but he didn't want to team up with Dustin. To be more precise, he wanted to be with Nancy. Jonathan immediately said no. Nancy didn't want the two of them to waste time on this at all. The children were eating, drinking, and having fun in the villa. Only Holly looked troubled. After making sure everyone was occupied with their own things, she sneaked into the woods quietly. After meeting up with Max, she confessed that Henry had said a lot of outrageous things. He wanted to use the children to draw another world to Earth. As they were talking, an abnormal sound suddenly came from behind them. Max thought they had been discovered, but when she got closer, she found it was Derek. Holly questioned him about why he was following her. Derek blurted out everything he had heard. He also said that Mike was now his best friend. Holly was confused. How did Derek get mixed up with her brother? Derek said he had known Henry was bad all along. When Henry was fooling everyone, he noticed that Holly's expression was off, and he knew something was wrong. He followed her here, and sure enough, it was the case. It had to be said that the little chubby boy was quite smart. At the same time, Joyce told Mike and the others about her idea. She wanted Will to get close and take control of the collective consciousness, then use the stolen power to kill Vecna. Murray and Robin thought it sounded interesting. Joyce went on to share her thoughts. She suggested that they make another tracker to find 11, Jonathan and the others. The prerequisite was that both groups had found Vecna's location. Mike thought this wasn't feasible, because only Dustin knew how to make a tracker. The plan hit a snag. Everyone had to eat something first to fill their stomachs. While eating, both Lucas and Erica thought of something. Erica said that although Dustin was missing, his teacher was still in the town. They could definitely ask him for help to make the tracker. Lucas said this idea was really good, but it still wasn't fast enough. He had a better plan. While heating popcorn, he realized that heating would activate the particles inside the mind flayer's body, so he suggested reviving the mind flayer with electric shocks. With them around, wouldn't they be able to gain access to the collective consciousness? Murray thought the risk was too high, but Joyce thought they could give both methods a try. At the same time, Steve was still very reluctant to team up with Dustin, so he kept complaining non-stop. Dustin couldn't stand it anymore either, so the two split up to search on their own, and Nancy wasn't in a good mood either. Nancy was eager to save her sister, but Steve and Jonathan weren't united at all. It was really hard to feel happy about anything. Just then, Jonathan noticed that the door next to him was very strange. A lot of white gelatinous liquid was oozing out of it. He immediately slammed the door open with force, and realized that this place was clearly not right. Meanwhile, Hopper was trying to contact Dustin. He kept repeating that he was in the church, wanting to know where Dustin was. But no response came from the other end of the walkie-talkie. Hopper was busy outside, while 11 talked to 008. She hoped that 008 could help her kill Vecna, but 008 was very scared. She had once escaped from the laboratory, but unexpectedly, she was caught by the military not long after. Her friends died in the scuffle, and she had become Dr. K's blood bag. On the other side, Derek returned to the villa as if nothing had happened. Then he deliberately made a show of heading into the woods, in front of several other children. Everyone questioned him about why he wasn't listening to Henry. Derek said he didn't care about that at all. Then he took the map and walked toward the cave that Max had told him about, with him distracting the others. Holly and Max searched for an exit back to the real world. They arrived at the place where Holly had woken up. They wanted to check if there was anything special here. They thought it would be hard to find, but it turned out to be very obvious. Max opened the door carefully. She heard screams coming from inside. She comforted Holly, saying that it was just a memory. After checking, Holly thought that Henry shouldn't have appeared at this time yet.
I hadn't met Henry yet.
Just because you didn't see him doesn't mean he wasn't here.
Then Max asked Holly where she had seen Henry for the last time. Holly replied that it was in the school library. Max immediately searched the room and pushed the books on the bookshelf aside. She successfully saw that memory. At the same time, Nancy and Jonathan were exploring the weird room. They found corpses embedded in white latex everywhere. The two of them had no idea why this was the case. When they saw a door ahead, they fought down their fear and ran toward it. Meanwhile, 11 was still talking to 008. 008 said that after she was captured, she had tried to escape again. On the way, she saw a pregnant woman who was a test subject. Only then did she realize that Dr. K had been taking her blood to transfuse it into the woman and the baby in her womb. There was more than one such pregnant woman, and they were all dying. At this point, 008 said that their superpowers didn't come from drugs. Instead, they came from the blood of the young Henry. Dr. K had thought that 008's blood would work too, but the result was obviously a failure. Among all the test subjects, only 11 was truly similar to Henry. This was also why Dr. K had been searching for 11 all along. She wanted to create more superhumans, so even if Vecna was eliminated, 11 would never have a happy and ordinary life. On the other side, although Derek was holding a compass, he couldn't tell directions at all for a while, so he was found by Henry before long. Henry questioned him about who had given him the map. Derek started swearing frantically. Henry told him to confess obediently, otherwise, he would have to collect the bodies of his family members. Derek had seen what happened to those who didn't obey. Would he betray Max? At this point, Max and Holly were still looking at the memory. They didn't understand where the exit was. Holly was also confused, so she sorted out the sequence of events again. When she thought about the amusement equipment nearby, she was surprised to find that its color wasn't right. The central part was clearly supposed to be yellow. After she smashed the gray part with all her strength, memories of her mother getting hurt to protect her flooded into her mind. She felt a little scared. Max quickly comforted her, thinking that they must be getting closer and closer to the exit. Mike and the others planned to give the Mind Flayer an electrotherapy session. Everything was ready, and Robin immediately helped to turn on the power, as the electric current kept increasing. After sharing the Mind Flayer's perspective, Will searched around and spotted the children. Through Derek's words, he learned that Holly was with Max, and Henry was looking for them everywhere. Meanwhile, Holly was confronting her painful memories head-on. When it was over, she saw a door. Max said that this was the exit, but the other side of the door was like hell. Holly asked Max if she was really not a monster. Max gave her a positive answer. Then the two got ready to leave, but the door suddenly shut. A voice full of resentment came from behind them. It was Henry who had caught up. He transformed into a monster in anger, and questioned Holly why she hadn't obeyed him. But the children were still useful to him, so Vecna had to take his anger out on Max. Max felt an intense sense of suffocation, and her counterpart in the real world was dying too. In the nick of time, Will tried to attack Vecna. Vecna was very shocked when he felt the pain.
Max cease to run!
As soon as the words were spoken, Vecna started driving Will away. Will couldn't stand the pain and passed out. Lucas told Robin to increase the power, but it was already too late. On the other side, Jonathan and Nancy made a discovery. They quickly tried to inform Dustin via walkie-talkie. They had successfully found the thing that supplied energy to the fleshy wall, and Dustin had also discovered an earth-shattering secret. After checking, he shouted anxiously for Jonathan not to touch anything, but the two sides were too far apart, and the walkie-talkie couldn't pick up the signal at all. Dustin was burning with anxiety, because although the things in the laboratory were related to the fleshy wall, they were another kind of terrifying entity. If it was destroyed, everyone including them would die. But Nancy didn't know any of this. She had already fired a bullet. Jonathan sensed the danger and quickly shielded Nancy. but they were still sent flying by a burst of energy, and the white latex around them seemed to have gained a life of its own. It seemed to want to swallow the two of them whole. In fact, when Dustin was acting alone, he had found Eleven's father's diary. He found out that the fleshy wall had nothing to do with Vecna. He and the children weren't on the other side of the wall at all. The fleshy wall was actually a product of scientific creation.
Then what the hell's on the other side of that wall?
Death.
The fleshy wall was about to collapse. Dustin said in despair that it was too late for everything. Humanity's understanding of the Upside Down had been wrong all along. This wasn't another world at all, but a huge wormhole, like a bridge. It connected the human world to another unknown world. Once the bridge collapsed, everyone would be sucked into the void. At the same time, Max and Holly ran for their lives frantically. They finally managed to hide in a cave. Vecna could do nothing to them, so he could only make threats, warning them not to leave again. But he didn't idle around either. Instead, he pulled Will back to the old place where he had once stayed. He ordered Will to be his spy once again. Will resisted with all his might. At this point, Mike and the others in the real world still knew nothing about this. They were distressed about why Will was still in a coma. As they were thinking about it, 11 and the others came back safely, but now wasn't the time for small talk. Mike told 11 to save Will quickly. On the other side, Dustin was very confused. He had thought that everyone was going to die soon, because judging from the energy fluctuation just now, Nancy should have fired the shot, so why was he still alive and well? Steve thought that Dustin was unreliable, so he wanted to find Nancy first before making any plans, but he found that the situation outside was really terrible, so they hurried upstairs to look for people. At this point, Jonathan and Nancy were surrounded by the white latex. They had tried to save themselves, but they failed. Having no other options left, they could only shout Dustin and Steve's names. But no one came even after they waited for a long time. They had already started saying their last words to each other. Jonathan knew that if they didn't hurry, it would be too late. At the very least, they shouldn't have any regrets. He took out the ring he had prepared long ago, and proposed to her. He said the words "I love you" that he had been holding back for so long. Nancy gave him the same reply. They had thought that they were going to die, as a doomed couple, but just then, the ring fell to the ground with a crisp sound. Nancy hurried to pick it up, only to find that the white latex had solidified. It was clear that they weren't going to die. Nancy threw herself into Jonathan's arms excitedly. Now Steve had no chance at all. On the other side, to go to the Upside Down and save Will, 11 resolutely stepped into the saltwater sensory deprivation tank. Then she found Will. She tried to wake him up. Unexpectedly, a large number of disgusting vines suddenly rushed out from all around, and quickly wrapped around Will. 11 quickly used her superpowers to attack the vines. Lucas went to the hospital, wanting to play Max's favorite music for her, but Max, encouraged by Holly, had left the cave at this point. Thinking that Henry didn't dare to step into this place, it must be because it held memories he was unwilling to face. As long as there were memories, there might be an exit to leave, so the two searched around the area. But Max had searched many times before, and had found nothing every time. Would a miracle happen this time? As they were talking, Holly suddenly missed her step, and almost fell into a hole in the ground. This was a place Max had never found before. After the two went inside, they found an injured man at the end. The man raised his weapon and stayed alert. Young Henry explained that he only wanted to help. Unexpectedly, the man pulled the trigger right away. To defend himself, Henry had to pick up a stone and smash it against the man's head. Seeing that the scene was too bloody, Max quickly pulled Holly away to run. Holly said she felt sorry for what Henry had been through. She asked why the man had fired the gun. Henry had clearly only wanted to help. Could this be the reason why he had turned bad? Max said that now wasn't the time to think about these things. They should hurry to find an exit to leave. With that said, she ran to the front to move the stones blocking the way. Holly didn't help. Instead, she kept watching the Henry who had just killed someone. She saw him pick up the man's box. She was about to see what was inside the box. Suddenly, Max patted her from behind. She said excitedly that the exit was behind the stones. At the same time, Will woke up from his coma in a state of collapse. 11 hurried to comfort him softly. Will sobbed and said that he had failed to stop Vecna. Vecna had looked into his memories and successfully found Max's location. He should be sending the Mind Flayer to the hospital to capture her right now. The next second, 11 went back to the real world. She told everyone that Max was in danger. She thought they should go to the hospital to save her immediately. On the other side, Robin, who was also at the hospital, was suspected of drug use by a nurse. She tried her best to argue that she was innocent, but the nurse didn't believe her at all. As luck would have it, military police were nearby. Upon hearing that Robin might be a drug addict, they immediately arrested her. On the way to take her away, the lights overhead started flickering. Robin realized that the mind flayer was coming. Robin kept emphasizing that it would be too late if they didn't run for their lives. But in the eyes of the military police, she was a drug addict. How could the words of a drug addict be trusted? Robin had to keep defending herself. Just then, a terrifying black shadow appeared on the wall. Then came two terrifying claws. The scene immediately descended into chaos. The mind flayer frantically bit one of the military police officers. The other one quickly opened fire, but he didn't fare any better. Taking advantage of the mind flayer attacking the military police, Robin took the nurse and fled as fast as they could, but before they ran far, they saw another mind flayer. What was more, the path behind them was blocked off. The two hugged each other in terror, trembling violently, but the mind flayer paid no attention to them at all, for their target was Max. Robin asked the nurse if there were any other exits. The nurse replied that they could leave through the staff parking lot. Upon hearing this, Robin quickly called Lucas. She wanted him to take Max and sneak away, but Lucas didn't answer the phone at all. The nurse asked if the mind flayers could understand English. After learning that they couldn't, she told Robin to send a message via the broadcast immediately. Before long, the mind flayers broke into Max's ward, only to find it completely empty, so they chased after her at full speed. At this point, Max had no idea that the real world was in utter chaos. She worked hard to pry the stone loose, hoping to crawl out of the hole. Unexpectedly, the entrance of the hole was still too small. Remembering how small and thin Holly was, she quickly told her to try crawling through it. Luckily, Holly crawled through it without any difficulty. Max tried to crawl through the hole once more. Thankfully, she succeeded this time. Listening to her favorite music, she held Holly's hand and prepared to go home. Meanwhile, Lucas and the others ran into a dead end. They had no choice but to find a place to hide. Even though they were in such a desperate situation, Lucas still refused to turn off the music, because he believed that Max would be back soon. Just as the mind flayer was about to spot them, suddenly, a noise came from the washing machine nearby. It was the oxygen tank that Holly's mother had secretly placed there. The mind flayer had no idea how powerful this thing was. At this point, following the sound of the music, Max successfully found Lucas in her own body. Holly wanted to go with her, but Max said it was impossible. Otherwise, the two of them would end up in the same body. Holly needed to find her own way out.
Music isn't the only way back. You just need something that connects you to the real world, to home.
Holly was deeply inspired. She found her own body through her beloved necklace. After an unwilling farewell, the two were determined to return to the real world. When he saw Max open her eyes, Lucas was overwhelmed with excitement. Just then, 11 and the others arrived. They were shocked to see that Max had woken up. Seeing all her friends there, Max felt an unprecedented sense of peace. She just didn't understand why she was in the laundry room. Upon learning that the mind flayer had come earlier, she quickly told them about the children. On the other side, Holly's consciousness returned to her body. She glanced briefly at her surroundings, and then roughly pulled the tube out of her mouth. Then she struggled frantically to break free from her restraints. But this place was truly terrifying. Because Vecna was hanging from the ceiling, she rushed outside immediately, wanting to go home. But once she was outside, she realized how naive her thought had been. She had no idea what this terrible place was. The most terrifying thing was that Vecna had spotted her. At the same time, Jonathan and Nancy were still trying to break down the door. The two of them were already exhausted, but the door didn't budge an inch. Now they could only pray that Dustin and the other would show up soon. Unexpectedly, a miracle really happened. After the four of them met up, Dustin took out the diary he had found. He told everyone that Holly wasn't on the other side of the fleshy wall.
Then where is she?
I don't know exactly, but wherever she is, it's not the Upside Down.
At this point, Holly was running as fast as she could. Suddenly, a crack in the ground tripped her up. She remembered Max once saying that Vecna had opened the fourth door, splitting Hawkins into two parts. Holly quickly used all her strength to pry apart the clods of soil. She had originally been hesitating about whether to go down, but when she saw Vecna approaching her, she climbed into the crack without any hesitation. Holly's scream caught Nancy's attention. She recognized it was her sister's voice, and quickly followed the sound to find her. Murray, Erica and the teacher were making a tracker. They had been working on it for 6 hours. Murray asked the teacher when it would be ready. If they couldn't contact Dustin soon, he might die. The teacher was anxious too. Dustin was his most promising student. With this in mind, he decided to take a risk. He finally succeeded in getting Dustin's coordinates. Soon Lucas and the others also learned the good news. But they didn't have time to catch their breath. A nurse rushed in pushing a wheelchair. She told everyone that trouble was coming. Everyone hurried to leave the hospital. They arrived at the detected coordinate location. They realized that Dustin and the others were underground. Mike tried to contact them via walkie-talkie. Luckily, Dustin replied. He also said that he had seen Holly just now. But right after he said that, the connection was lost again. To help them go back to the real world, everyone went to the crack. 11 immediately used her superpowers, and after successfully opening the door to the other world, everyone went in one after another, holding flashlights to look for people. After some time, the two groups met up smoothly. Mike looked around for his sister, but he saw Nancy with a sad look on her face. He immediately realized that something was wrong. Nancy said that a few minutes ago she had heard Holly's cry for help. She had hurried to the rooftop to check what was going on, but she had seen Holly floating in midair. Before she could say a word, Holly was pulled away by a force. It was clearly done by Vecna. At this point, Vecna took Holly back to his lair, and reinserted the tube into her mouth. He also said that soon, everything would be over. On the other side, Mike and the others had to think of a new way to save people. After returning to the base, Max was in a very low mood. Lucas knew she was blaming herself, so he comforted her, saying that Holly would definitely be okay. Max was really sad, regretting that she hadn't stayed to accompany Holly, leaving her alone to face the terrifying monster.
You've been in Vecna's mind. You can help us beat him.
Max said she couldn't do it. She had no idea where the children were being held captive. Dustin suddenly poked his head out, and confessed that he knew where the children were. Then he drew a diagram to explain to everyone they were in Hawkins, and on the other side was the Upside Down. Calling it a world wasn't accurate, because this place was just a bridge. The other end connected by the bridge was the real world. Dustin named it the Bottomless Abyss. Simply put, it was a place full of evil and chaos.
I believe this abyss is the true home of the Demogorgons, the Vines, the Mind Flayer, all the nasty shit we found in the Upside Down.
This must be where 11 threw Henry. When he first got there, he had no idea what was going on either. He wandered aimlessly inside. 11's father used 11 to find him. With this guide, the bridge was formed. This allowed the Mind Flayer and Vecna to enter Hawkins, and when Vecna was seriously injured last year, he must have returned to the Bottomless Abyss to recuperate. At this point, Hopper asked what Vecna wanted with the children. Will thought the reason was that children had weak minds and were easier to shape and control, to strengthen his power in this way. Upon hearing this, Max rushed to speak, combined with what Holly had said earlier. She thought Vecna wanted to draw the two worlds together. Will suddenly realized that the reason Vecna went to the Bottomless Abyss wasn't to heal his wounds. His real purpose was to create cracks, just like he did to Hawkins back then. With the cracks, the two worlds would collide and merge into one. To stop all this from happening, Hopper thought they needed a helicopter to fly into the Bottomless Abyss and rescue the children. But his idea was completely unfeasible, and this time, Steve came to the rescue. He proposed the beanstalk plan, taking advantage of the critical period of the two worlds fusion, sneak into Vecna's dimensional bridge through the crack in Hawkins, and blow up its energy foundation. To completely cut off the fusion of the two worlds, everyone unanimously agreed to his plan and set to work. 008 and 11 got into the astral plane to talk. 008 suggested that after the mission was over, they should disappear along with the Upside Down, so that no one with ill intentions could use 11 to create new test subjects ever again. 11 agreed, but before the mission started, Will decided to face his fears head-on. He gathered everyone together and confessed that he was actually gay. Vecna had used this to break his mental defenses, but now that he had said it, it would be okay. Everything was ready. They drove straight into the laboratory building. Nancy climbed out of the roof and fired wildly, taking out most of the soldiers. Then she bypassed Dr. K and rushed into the other world. On the other side, Henry gathered the children around the dining table. He told them to hold hands and close their eyes. 11 and the others drove into the laboratory, and finally succeeded in passing through the portal to the Upside Down. The top military officials were confused about why the portal had opened on its own. The guarding soldier said he had no idea what was going on either. Dr. K glanced at the shortwave radio assembly kit on the floor, and realized that this was where the problem lay. There was no use dwelling on this anymore. At this moment, Hopper and his group's car had come to a stop. Mike stopped 11 to cheer her on, convinced that the plan would definitely work. When that time came, everything would be over. They would go to a place where no one could find them, and start a happy life that belonged only to the two of them. 11 hugged Mike emotionally, then, as planned, she headed to the destination with 008 and the others. What they didn't know was that a military squad was watching them secretly from the shadows. Someone suggested notifying Dr. K to come and help, but the captain said that woman was too much trouble, and there was no need to contact her at all. They could capture 11 on their own. Sometime later, 11, 008 and the others entered Hawkins' laboratory. This place held many unspeakable painful memories for 11, but this time, coming here was 11's own choice. She resolutely climbed into the sensory deprivation tank, planning to team up with Max to find Henry, and put an end to his conspiracy to merge the two worlds. Before getting in the water, Hopper made a secret signal with her. 2 knocks meant the Upside Down had started to move. After that, Hopper would confirm again to see if the planet was close enough to the Iron Tower. Once confirmed, he would knock 3 times to notify 11 to kill Henry immediately.
Pray to God Dustin's right and that planet stops moving.
11 was afraid that something might go wrong at some point. She hoped that no matter what happened, Hopper wouldn't pull her out of the water. She had to take Henry down. Hopper agreed, and added that after everything was over, 11 needed to escape with all her might. Dr. K could be dealt with by finding another way later. 11 nodded, holding back her sadness. Then she put on the equipment and got into the water. 008 also blindfolded himself with a cloth. On the other side, Mike and the others prepared to climb the signal tower. Their main purpose was to restore communication, find a chance to go to the Upside Down to look for the kids, and prepare for killing Henry and destroying the bridge later. On the way up the signal tower, Mike and Will had a talk. Mike said he had been so stupid before. He hadn't even noticed that Will had feelings for him. Will thought he didn't need to apologize. This ending was perfect as it was. They were still good friends. The scene shifted to the real world. The nurse was running around anxiously, wondering why Mike and the others hadn't reached the top of the tower yet. Max told her to calm down. The signal tower was a full 150 meters tall. Climbing to the top was no easy feat, but the nurse was still nervous. When she got nervous, she felt like eating. She was about to go find something to eat, but in the blink of an eye, she disappeared into thin air. Max tried to go look for her, only to be surprised to find that she had regained feeling in her hands and feet. She tried to get out of her wheelchair and walk. When she saw that the floor was covered with water, she knew the plan was proceeding smoothly. A few seconds later, Max successfully met up with 11 and 008. Meanwhile, Mike and the others had already climbed to the top of the tower. Everyone looked up at the sky and saw that the planet of the Upside Down was indeed falling. Murray received the news and quickly notified Hopper, saying that the planet was falling at an extremely fast speed. 11 had to hurry up. At the same time, 11 and the other 2 spotted Vecna in the Upside Down. Max asked why they didn't kill him right there. 11 said that wouldn't work. This was inside her mind. They had to get into Vecna's mind to kill him. With that said, 11 took her hand. The next second, the 3 of them were inside Vecna's mind. Before they could do anything, a signal came from Hopper. They realized the Upside Down had started to move. 11 said they had to speed up and find Henry, but that was no easy task. On the other side, the nurse was watching over Max as she ate. Suddenly, a strange noise came from outside. She quickly looked out the window and saw Dr. K approaching with a group of people. The nurse exclaimed that something terrible was about to happen. A few seconds later, Dr. K's men rushed into the building and searched everywhere, but after searching for a long time, they found no one, because the nurse had taken Max to hide somewhere. On the other side, Lucas, who was on the top of the tower, noticed a problem. He quickly told everyone to look carefully. The tip of the tower didn't seem to align with the rift. This wasn't a good thing at all. If the Iron Tower couldn't fit into the rift, it would be knocked down, and everything would be over. Dustin was terrified and quickly notified Hopper, saying that 11 didn't have much time left. Hopper asked how much time was left. Dustin thought it was at most 30 seconds. They needed 11 to come and save them. Upon hearing this, Hopper stared intently at the stopwatch. When the time was almost up, he knocked 3 times. But 11 didn't wake up, because Max thought they were about to find Henry. If they went out now, all their efforts would be in vain. Hopper relayed this news to Dustin. Dustin shouted that they were going to be crushed by the planet, telling Hopper to knock 3 times again quickly. Hopper did as he was told. 11 received the signal and tried to leave, but Max insisted again that this was their only chance to find Henry. The 30 seconds passed in a flash. The tip of the signal tower was already crushed, and the entire tower was tottering. But luckily, the three of them managed to find Henry and the kids. 11 immediately used her powers to fling Henry away. The kids woke up instantly. Meanwhile, Mike and the others were holding on for dear life. They thought they were going to die here today, but the upside down actually stopped falling. Everyone except Steve escaped temporarily. Just as Steve was about to fall to his death, in a moment of crisis, Jonathan grabbed his hand. Having been saved by his rival in love, it would be rude to bicker with him later. Then everyone climbed toward the upside down. Nancy took the lead to check the situation. After confirming it was safe, she told the others to come up. At the same time, Holly was thrilled to see Max come back. But the other kids didn't feel the same way. They still believed what Henry had said. They thought Max was a monster who wanted to destroy the world. Max quickly said she had a way to prove herself. Soon after, Henry returned to the diner and found that all the kids were gone. He furiously demanded that 11 tell him where the kids were. 11 replied that they had gone to a very safe place, but in reality, the kids were right next to them. It was 008 who had hidden their presence. At this moment, 11 revealed the real reason why Henry had captured the kids. Henry called her stupid. As long as he used his powers to enter their minds, he could easily find the kids' location. With that, he revealed his monstrous arm. The kids were utterly shocked at the sight. A few seconds later, Henry located Holly and the others. He rushed over to check on them immediately, but by then, the kids had already run away under Max's leadership. Taking advantage of Henry's distraction, 008 and 11 teamed up to kill him, but the cunning Henry got away. On the other side, Mike and the others headed for Vecna's lair. On the way, Steve talked to his savior, saying he owed him a favor. Jonathan said he just thought Steve was a poser, but he had never wanted him dead. Besides, just a short while ago, he and Nancy had already confessed their feelings to each other, and she even said she wanted to have 6 kids together. Steve also said he could tell he never stood a chance. The reason he kept hanging around was probably just to compete with Jonathan. As they were talking, Joyce told them to hurry up and catch up. Vecna's lair was not far away. Will took a look and said firmly that this was the right place. The kids were locked up inside and they had to rescue them as soon as possible. At the same time, 12 kids were running toward the cave under Max's lead. But halfway there, Derek couldn't run anymore. Not wanting to hold the others back, he said they should leave him there. Of course, no one would leave him behind alone. Just then, Max noticed the grass swaying. She thought it was Henry coming after them, but upon taking a closer look, it was 11 and the others. 008 said Henry seemed to have gone to the real world. It was a pity they hadn't been able to kill him. For now, they had to hurry and take shelter in the cave first. But the truth was that Henry had come for Hopper. He created an illusion for Hopper, making him see his poor daughter. This was Hopper's most painful weakness. Maybe he thought this trick wasn't cruel enough. Henry then played the conversation between 008 and 11, letting Hopper know about their plan to sacrifice themselves, hoping to make Hopper stop the plan from proceeding.
She's going to do it, Jim. She's going to end her life.
Show yourself!
Hopper thought he was lying, but the scenes unfolding before his eyes were all telling the story of a father's helplessness and anger. One daughter had died a tragic death, and the other was about to follow in her footsteps.
You are the curse.
The next second, the water in the tank was flowing out wildly. Hopper rushed over to check what was happening, only to find that it looked like he had shot 11 dead. He frantically smashed the tank's glass. At this moment, the kids were still running away. Hearing the knocking sound, 11 and the other 2 stopped. They didn't understand why Hopper was sending a signal. As they were wondering, 11 suddenly disappeared. Then 008 and Max vanished too. When the kids turned around, they were shocked to find that all 3 of them were gone. At the same time, Hopper carried 11 to the ground and was about to perform CPR on her. When he noticed that the wound on her body had disappeared, he had fallen for Vecna's trick. To make matters worse, because Max had made a sound when she returned to the real world, she was caught red-handed by Dr. K, and their carefully laid plan was exposed as well. On the other side, the kids searched frantically for Max and the others, wondering if the monster had been there just now. Holly knew they couldn't panic now. She told everyone to keep running toward the cave, saying they would be safe there. At this moment, 11 put on her shoes, planning to go to the upside down to find Mike and the others. 008 thought the kids would be captured by Vecna, even if they hurried over. The 2 worlds would have already merged.
If Holly and the kids make it to the cave.
With that, 11 was about to set off for the upside down, but Hopper stopped her before she could walk out the door. He was upset about her plan to sacrifice herself. so he said he wouldn't detonate the C4 bombs to destroy the Upside Down. 11 was completely speechless. 008 thought he was crazy and raised her gun to shoot him. Hopper told her to go ahead and do it. He truly felt that 11 had had a miserable life since birth, and never had the right to choose her own path. He hoped 11 could survive and live a happy life. There had to be other ways to stop Dr. K. 008 was moved by his words. 11 fell into deep thought too. In this tender moment, the military personnel showed up. Meanwhile, Holly had led the others into the cave. They had wanted to breathe a sigh of relief, but realized that Derek hadn't followed them, so she hurried back the way they had come to look for him. Seeing that Vecna was about to catch up, she immediately grabbed Derek and ran for their lives. Derek quickly grabbed Holly's hand and pulled her into the cave. Luckily, all those meals hadn't been for nothing. He managed to save Holly in the end. He flipped Henry off before entering the cave to meet up with the others. The scene shifted. Mike looked at his fully armed sister and said he should have a gun too. Nancy thought for a moment and gave him one. Mike examined his gun contentedly, only to be told that it was loaded with nothing but flares. As everyone was talking, Will suddenly shared Henry's vision. He quickly told the others that the guy was still alive. At this moment, Henry was willing to risk everything to get the kids back. He chose to face his painful memories head-on. Here, one could see how Henry had tried to help someone out of kindness, only to be hurt in return. He picked up a stone and smashed the person to death in a fit of rage. Then he opened the box on the ground. That was when the Mind Flayer was released. Through their shared vision, Will saw that the kids were in danger, and tried to stay where he was to stop Vecna. Joyce stayed to keep him company. The others sped up and ran toward the lair. At the same time, the military found 11 and the others. They immediately activated their sonic weapons to interfere. 11 and 008 knelt on the ground, clutching their ears in agony. Hopper had to pick 11 up and find a place to hide first. 11 endured the pain and begged Hopper to save her sister. On the other side, 008, who had stayed behind, was captured not long after. The captain rambled on for a bit, which bought Hopper enough time to get back. Hopper pulled out his gun and attacked, taking out the minions before preparing to take 008 away. Unexpectedly, the captain launched a surprise attack and kicked him to the ground. The captain forced Hopper to reveal 11's location, threatening to kill 008 if he refused. 008 signaled to Hopper not to say a word. Hopper listened to her and shouted that he didn't care what they did to him. Just as the captain was about to pull the trigger, Murray, the ultimate sidekick, pulled out 2 bombs in the nick of time. Then he took them by surprise and blew up the military's helicopter with the bombs. The sonic weapons were destroyed along with it. The tide of the battle turned in an instant. The soldiers were no match for the superpowered 008 and 11, and they all met gruesome ends. But unexpectedly, 008 had been shot during the chaos. 11 begged Hopper to go get a first aid kit, then pleaded with her sister to hold on. But by the time Hopper hurried back, 008 was already dead. There was no time for grief as 11 and Hopper made their way to the rooftop. Murray was still shouting excitedly about his heroic feat, but noticed that no one else was smiling. Confused, he asked where 008 had gone. Seeing that 11 was on the verge of tears, he realized that something terrible must have happened. Just then, 11 saw many boulders floating in the air. She thought she could use the boulders as stepping stones, jumping from one to another to leap into the Upside Down and kill Henry. Hopper was reluctant to let her go, and asked if she would come back after everything was done.
I need you to believe in me.
11 thanked the kind Hopper for taking her in when she was at her most lost and helpless, and for giving her the warmth of a father figure. But now she had grown up, and she was capable of making the right choices. On the other side, Holly and the others took shelter in the cellar. She was familiar with the layout, so she told the others to crawl to the other side of the stone crack. But it wasn't long before Henry caught up with them. Witnessing his younger self responding to the Mind Flayer's call, he burst into tears. Watching all this unfold, Will felt a deep sense of empathy, thinking that Henry was just like him back then, used by the Mind Flayer and forced to become its vessel. That was also why the Mind Flayer didn't want Henry to enter the cave. It didn't want Henry to remember any of this. Will encouraged Henry to rebel and join them in stopping the Mind Flayer's conspiracy, but Henry said that wasn't the case. The Mind Flayer had shown him how broken the world was. He had chosen to stop resisting on his own accord, because he truly agreed with its methods from the bottom of his heart.
It needs me, and I need it.
Just then, the lair in the Upside Down transformed into the Mind Flayer's true form, and launched a frenzied attack on Mike and the others approaching it. Staring at the colossal beast in front of them, everyone was dumbfounded. The power gap between the two sides was simply too great. Mike and the others had to flee in disarray. Dustin slipped and fell to the ground. Luckily, Lucas rushed to his rescue just in time. Otherwise, he would have met his end right there. But running away forever wasn't a viable solution. Just when they were at their wits' end, 11 arrived. The Mind Flayer immediately switched targets and attacked her. 11 dodged nimbly, then flew into the air and tore the creature apart with her powers. Seeing his domain being attacked, Vecna demanded if 11 was suicidal, and launched a fierce assault on her. At this moment, Mike and the others were burning with anxiety, knowing they had to help 11. The hive mind worked both ways. Logically, if the Mind Flayer was hurt, Vecna would suffer the brunt of it too. But this was easier said than done. How could they possibly harm such a gigantic Mind Flayer? Dustin thought they should split up and attack from different directions, since they couldn't land a critical hit in one go. They would wear it down little by little. Lucas thought it was a solid plan. There happened to be a canyon ahead, someone needed to lure it there, and then the others would attack while it was trapped. But the question was, who would be the bait? Nancy volunteered without a moment's hesitation. She then opened fire on the Mind Flayer relentlessly, and shouted for the others to get into position. At this point, 11 was still locked in battle with Vecna. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to shake violently. Vecna guessed the Mind Flayer was under attack, and wondered if they could handle the threat. 11 suddenly kicked up a cloud of dust to blind him and launched a surprise attack. Nancy was cornered. With her life hanging by a thread, Jonathan charged over with a flamethrower. The Mind Flayer screamed in agony as the flames seared its body. Thanks to the hive mind, Vecna felt the pain too. 11 seized the opportunity and tried to take control of him. Vecna struggled with all his might, but 11 still managed to pin him against the sharp spikes behind him. Meanwhile, Mike and the others joined the fight one after another, launching a relentless barrage of attacks on the Mind Flayer. The Mind Flayer tried to fight back, but its massive body got stuck in the canyon, rendering it immobile. To add insult to injury, Dustin and his partner found its weak spot. They mustered all their strength and stabbed away relentlessly, shouting vows of revenge for their friends as they attacked. The excruciating pain sent Vecna into a frenzy. He summoned all his power to kill 11 and then go after the others, but to his shock, his body suddenly stopped obeying him, because Will had intervened. Will had no more fear left in his heart, and Vecna could do nothing against him. In the end, through everyone's combined efforts, both the Mind Flayer and Vecna were defeated. Nancy hurried into the Mind Flayer's body to find Holly, then carried her to safety. Thankfully, Holly was unharmed. The two sisters hugged each other tightly. Mike arrived, saw his sister was safe, and rushed over to hug his family. Then everyone set about rescuing the other kids. They thought it was finally over, but unexpectedly, Vecna's body began to twitch. Thinking about all the lives he had destroyed, Joyce couldn't contain her rage, grabbed an axe, and hacked at his head repeatedly. Everyone stared at the severed head rolling on the ground, sighing in relief that it was truly over this time. They then made their way back to the Upside Down via the signal tower. Dustin contacted Hopper, telling him to hurry to the truck for the rendezvous. Upon hearing everyone was safe, Murray immediately activated the bomb countdown. On their way out, everyone chatted and laughed, celebrating their victory. They were already planning how to celebrate once they were out, but then they were ambushed by the military. Mike and the others were caught completely off guard. After rounding everyone up, Dr. K searched everywhere for 11. Mike and Dustin thought 11 must have escaped. They breathed a sigh of relief, only to turn around and see her standing at the portal to the Upside Down. The bomb was about to go off any second. Mike was terrified and tried to rush over to stop her. 11 walked slowly toward Mike and said that if she didn't sacrifice herself, this nightmare would never truly end. Mike shouted that there had to be another way, but 11 asked him to explain things to the others for her, because in 11's heart, Mike had always been the one who understood and trusted her the most. No matter then or now, Mike would always be her rock. With that, 11 pushed him out of the way. Mike screamed in despair, but as the countdown reached 0, the bomb exploded in a massive blast. The Upside Down vanished completely, taking 11 with it into oblivion. Once everything settled down, the military had no more reason to hold them captive. Mike stepped forward in disbelief, unable to accept that 11 was truly gone. The scene shifted to a year and a half later. Everything was finally looking up. Steve had become a coach, Lucas and Max were living a happy life together. Dustin graduated as an outstanding student. Joyce and Hopper were celebrating Will's successful high school graduation. Only Mike was still trapped in his grief. Hopper found out and went to talk to him. Mike blamed himself for 11's departure. He had only talked the talk about taking 11 to a place where no one could find them, but never did anything about it. That was why she had made the choice to sacrifice herself. Hopper told him it wasn't his fault, it had been 11's choice, and now it was Mike's turn to choose. Would he continue to wallow in despair, trapped forever in his grief, hurting himself, his family, and his friends in the process, or would he accept the truth and move forward with his life?
Find a way to accept her choice. Doesn't mean you gotta like it, doesn't mean you gotta understand it.
Hopper said he was certain 11 would want him to choose the latter. Even if she was no longer there, she would want the person she loved to live a wonderful life. Mike thought he was right and agreed to go to the graduation ceremony with him. When they arrived, Mike's mother was deeply moved to see him there. Once everyone was seated, the valedictorian Dustin delivered an incredibly bold speech, which was mostly a rant about his grievances against the principal over the years. The crowd roared with approval. The principal was so furious that he threatened to make everyone stay back for extra classes, but the kids had already graduated, so his threats were empty words. That night, Hopper took Joyce out for a candlelit dinner. When the mood turned romantic, Hopper pulled out the ring he had been hiding for so long. Joyce accepted it, overcome with emotion, then they danced together. Meanwhile, Mike and the gang played their game once more, and so, Stranger Things came to an end. This beloved IP, which had accompanied audiences for nearly a decade, finally wrapped up its story. It had begun with a game in the first season and ended with one as well. It was a conclusion filled with nostalgia and reluctance, bringing longtime fans to tears in an instant. Many viewers thought the ending was a bit underwhelming, but not all goodbyes need to be grand and spectacular. This ending might not have been dazzling, but it was more than satisfying. Lastly, we have to talk about 11 vanishing along with the Upside Down. A small number of viewers have a different theory. They believe 11 isn't dead. If the military had wanted to capture her, they would have neutralized her powers beforehand. But 11 had clearly used her powers when she said goodbye to Mike. Does this mean she might have found a way to escape after all? That's the end of today's recap. If you enjoyed this commentary, please subscribe to my channel. Your support is my greatest motivation.